But anyway, Kasparov writes, so they employ brute force to examine every possible move as deeply as possible in the allotted time. They evaluate each one with a score, and then choose the move with the highest score. So Kasparov is talking about the evaluation function of a brute force method. And he's saying Botvinnik wanted to go beyond this, to design a program that employed logic to select moves instead of brute force calculation. Now for me this is really clarifying some stuff about Kotov's book. In particular, this evaluation function. Where was that? Kotov's book was first published in English in around 1971. There is a reference to one game I've just noticed earlier, 1968. So it is at a time, Kotov's book says at a time when brute force was starting to prove itself, whilst Botvinnik's project was starting to show that it was a complete failure. It couldn't even beat a chess beginner. So Kasparov writes, in short, his project was a failure. His years of position papers and theoretical models never produced a program that could play better than a human beginner. Brute force programs were playing at a relatively competent level in the 1970s. How could a computer emulate human creativity and intuition? Even today, 30 years later, when computers play at world championship level, they mainly rely on brute force methods. So why is this such an important implication to gather from Kasparov's book? I think it is because if, Botvinnik's project was a failure, then why should we be trying to think, like computers? We can't simulate brute force. That's out of the question. There's no way we can calculate millions of moves a second. But the other question nagging at me was in Kotov's introduction, where he almost hinted at the evaluation function, in this kind of reverse project to Botvinnik's failure project, where he writes, Kotov in his book writes on page 12, armed with the preliminary soundings, the Grandmaster then tries to assess the position, and then here it comes. He not only has to solve the basic problem of who stands better, he has to discern the nature of the position down to its smallest details. It's the first sentence part there which intrigues me. He not only has to solve the basic problem of who stands better. For me, that reminds me of the evaluation function. So anyway, how does Kotov dismantle one of Flohr's losses, probably his only loss in Hastings in the last 5 years, where he's won the tournament every time or come joint first? Well, let's have a look at that game now. So Flohr played d4 and Fine played e6, and we'll go to the critical position where we have this kind of, scientific roller coaster of analysis presented by Kotov. So it became like a semi-Slav with this triangle. So the black bishop here on c8, needs to be liberated somehow later on. So a solid system by black. So black takes on c4. So maybe he's going to liberate the bishop by fianchettoing on the queen side later. So knight d5, offering the exchange of dark squared bishops. And Flohr plays, very, thematically. He realises that one of his strategic trump cards is this bishop on this diagonal. So he takes on c3 here, and after c5, you can see the bishop is being extended in scope now on the diagonal. After ed, rook d5, we see that there's going to be, soon some tension mounting. Can he exploit the bishop or not? b6, so black is preparing to fianchetto the bishop, but in doing so, potentially it was useful in guarding e6, as we'll see. e6 becomes a very critical tactical square. After rook fd1, rook f8, Rybka gives this as much better for white. In fact, Flohr plays a Rybka high, very well suggested move here, b4, which it's undermining black, putting black even under more pressure. So black can't casually get his queen's bishop out at the moment. He takes on b4 and he plays knight f6. And now there comes rook e5. So Rybka first move by Salo Flohr. So, he is pretty good tactically, and he's going to go for it now. And he goes for it with this leaping knight move, knight g5. So he's trying to target f7. There's an immediate threat in some variations of bishop f7, you know, exposing the black queen. But in this particular position, you know, maybe it's not quite on. So black plays bishop b7. He tries to get away bishop b7, but he's left control of that critical e6 square. So Flohr plays an amazing, you know, tactical move here, to his credit. First move with Rybka. I wonder if you can spot it. There's a visual clue, obviously the e6 square. So I'll give you 5 seconds starting from now. Okay, Flohr plays knight e6. There's no flaw in his play so far, it seems. So after queen c6, threatened with a mate in 1, not so subtle, Flohr plays f3. And now we have the move bishop a6. So black's queen's bishop is now being involved tactically for this seemingly incidental, you know, pin on the c-file. So white, though, is not too concerned that he's shifting his pieces for a direct assault on the black king. The knight's immune now, definitely, because the queens will be in pre after bishop e6, winning the black queen. So Sailor Flohr, he plays rook d4. And after this move, it becomes apparent to Rybka that white has quite a crushing position. What was played in the game was rook fc8. And now we have this critical position. And Kotov writes, annotators the whole world overanalyzed this position. A win for white found in one country was quickly refuted in articles published in another. A practically invincible finesse spotted by one analyst was soon shown to be an error on further examination. Finally, the English master Winter, who by the way had a good record of beating Capablanca, he found the one and only way to win. I too had worked out the same line in my own analysis. Examine the variations which arise, and I wonder if you could spot the one and only winning move which Kotov claims. So this book was written around 1970. He didn't have the benefit of Rybka or anything. So what do you think was the one and only winning move? I'll give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, Kotov's move is Rybka's second choice at depth 15. I don't know if I put it on a greater depth and I leave Rybka running overnight, if it will change to Kotov's move. But at the moment, the move which Rybka suggests is knight takes g7. But apparently, you know, so Kotov at that time thought that b5 was the winning move. So b5, the idea behind this move is not immediately apparent. Sure, it's not. For me, this is a kind of brute force move, you know, listing, you know, all the candidate moves in the position. Because there were lots of candidates, you know, rook g5, knight g7. Anyway, so b5, it opens up this diagonal. So it's got a subtle implication there of allowing, you know, the queen b4 to be a resource in some variations, which is interesting in its own right. A lot of examples so far, it seems the interesting candidate moves are generated with the very last move. So in this b5 generates the possibilities of queen b4. So b5, it gives white, you know, the b4 square for the queen.